Level 1. The briefcase nobody wanted. You're 3 years out of Fordham Law. You've got $94,000 in student debt, a studio apartment in Queens with a radiator that doesn't work right, and a job at a mid-size firm that handles mostly personal injury and landlord disputes. You're good. Not great. Good. The kind of good that gets you noticed by exactly nobody. Then a partner pulls you aside one afternoon in November and hands you a file with no cover sheet. "This client can't come in," he says. "You go to him." The address is a warehouse in Red Hook. You drive there yourself. You sit in a folding chair across from a man in a red and blue suit with the mask pulled up just enough to show his mouth. He's bleeding through the fabric at the ribs. He doesn't acknowledge the blood. You don't either. He tells you what happened: a fight, a civilian property claim, 3 witnesses who saw something they're already being pressured to forget. He needs representation that doesn't exist on paper. You tell him you'll need a retainer. He slides an envelope across the table. Inside is $8,500 in cash and a burner phone with one contact saved as R. You take it. You don't ask whose warehouse this is. You don't ask why the firm sent you specifically. You don't ask about the blood. You tell yourself it's just a client with unusual circumstances. You tell yourself this is still regular law, just with extra steps. You're not wrong, not yet. You drive home. You deposit $7,000 and keep $1,500 out. You bill 6 hours at a fictional consulting rate. You file the paperwork under a subsidiary LLC your firm maintains for sensitive asset protection clients. You sleep fine. That's the first warning sign, and you miss it completely.
Level 2. The retainer that never runs out. Within 4 months, you have 6 clients you can't discuss with anyone. They pay in cash, wire transfers through 3 different holding companies, or occasionally in favors, access, information, introductions. One of them is a reformed arms dealer who now operates a legitimate shipping company and needs quarterly legal reviews. One of them is a vigilante with enhanced strength who keeps destroying city infrastructure and needs liability coverage through a shell nonprofit. You learn to keep 2 sets of billing records. You learn which judges respond to which pressure points, not bribes, not exactly, but timing. Which assistant DAs are ambitious enough to negotiate quietly. Which detectives will trade a statement for a closed loop. You clear $180,000 this year. None of the interesting money touches your 1040. The firm gives you a corner office. Nobody asks why your billables are so clean. Nobody asks why your clients never come in person. In this ecosystem, results are the only language that matters, and your results are immaculate. You start to understand the structure. Spider-Man isn't the client, not really. The client is the network around him, the people who owe him favors, the civilians he saved who now need legal protection, the intermediaries who move between his world and the regular one. You are the membrane, the legal tissue that keeps infection out. You're still telling yourself you're one of the good guys. You're not wrong, but the definition is getting more flexible. Level 3. The name that opens doors. Someone refers to you as Spider-Man's lawyer at a bar association dinner. Not loudly, a whisper almost, the kind you're supposed to not hear. But you hear it, and you watch what happens to the faces of the people within earshot. A federal prosecutor excuses herself from the conversation. A city councilman makes eye contact with you and gives a slow nod he probably thinks is subtle. You have become a symbol before you became a person in this world. You now operate out of your own firm. 4 associates, 2 paralegals, and a receptionist who was former SHIELD intelligence and whose job duties you don't examine closely. Your address is technically a suite in Midtown, but the real work happens in 3 other locations, one in the Bronx, one in a secured server room in Jersey City, and one in a diner in Flushing, where you meet clients who need total deniability. The work has evolved. You're no longer just handling property damage claims and witness management. You're structuring agreements between vigilantes and city agencies. You're drafting the legal frameworks that let certain non-governmental actors operate in certain jurisdictions without formal sanction. You're the reason Spider-Man can swing through a restricted airspace corridor without triggering FAA violations every single time. You build systems, clean, durable, invisible systems. The moral calculus has changed too. You used to ask whether something was legal. Now you ask whether it's defensible. Those are different questions. You know that. You've stopped pretending they're the same. You haven't done anything you're ashamed of. Not yet. Level 4. The agreement you don't sign. There's a meeting in a building that doesn't appear on any city zoning map. You're escorted in by someone you recognize from Avengers-adjacent briefings. Not a hero, a handler. He doesn't introduce himself. You don't ask. The room has 7 people in it. 2 are wearing full tactical gear. 1 is a man in an expensive suit who you later learn holds a deputy position at a federal intelligence agency that officially doesn't interact with enhanced individuals. They want an arrangement. Not a contract, an understanding, the kind that lives in the spaces between official documents. The understanding is this: certain enhanced individuals operate in a legal gray zone. That gray zone benefits everyone at this table, provided it remains contained. Your job, going forward, is containment. You will be notified when an incident occurs that requires legal architecture. You will construct that architecture within 72 hours. You will never appear in the public record in connection with any of it. In exchange, protection. Yours, your firm's, your family's. You sit with that word, family. They know about your sister in Hoboken, your father's property case in Westchester. They know about the parking violation you got expunged 3 years ago. Not a threat, just information, presented neutrally, the way people with total leverage present things when they want you to understand the shape of the room. You say yes. Of course you say yes. You drive home and sit in your car in the parking garage for 22 minutes. You're not panicking. You're not upset. You're doing the thing you've trained yourself to do in high-stakes moments. You're processing. You tell yourself you're still protecting people. And you are. That part is still true. That part will stay true for a while longer. But you've crossed something. Not a legal line, you're too precise for that. Something quieter. A line inside yourself that you'll spend the next several years pretending doesn't exist. Level 6. The architect. There's a legal framework operating in 7 states right now that you built. It governs the interaction protocols between municipal law enforcement and enhanced individuals. It creates a system of legal indemnification that flows through 4 layers of nonprofit, corporate, and quasi-governmental entities before it ever touches anything that could be traced to a human being. It took you 14 months to design. 2 federal judges have issued rulings shaped by precedents your framework created without knowing it. You have built invisible infrastructure. You are not famous. That's the whole point. Lawyers who get famous in this world get disbarred, disappear, or become leverage. You remain invisible. When people in the know speak your name, they do it quietly, not out of fear, out of respect, which in this ecosystem is the same thing. Spider-Man has brought you 3 new clients in the last year, not directly, never directly, always through intermediaries, and each of them is a layer deeper than the last. A reformed supervillain seeking legal identity reconstruction, an enhanced individual fighting illegal government detention, a tech company secretly developing enhancement technology under a defense contract umbrella that you need to untangle from 17 regulatory bodies simultaneously. You win every single one. The cost is this. You haven't had a full conversation with your father in 4 months, not because you don't want to, because you can't. Too much of what you are now is classified, sealed, compartmentalized, or simply inexpressible in language that would make sense to someone who doesn't live in this world. You sit across from him at dinner, and he asks how work is going, and you say fine, and he says you look tired, and you say I'm okay, and you know that the gap between who he thinks you are and who you actually are is now permanently, structurally unbridgeable. You pass the bread. You talk about baseball. You're excellent at this.
Level 6, the architect. There's a legal framework operating in 7 states right now that you built. It governs the interaction protocols between municipal law enforcement and enhanced individuals. It creates a system of legal indemnification that flows through 4 layers of nonprofit, corporate, and quasi-governmental entities before it ever touches anything that could be traced to a human being. It took you 14 months to design. 2 federal judges have issued rulings shaped by precedents your framework created without knowing it. You have built invisible infrastructure. You are not famous. That's the whole point. Lawyers who get famous in this world get disbarred, disappear, or become leverage. You remain invisible. When people in the know speak your name, they do it quietly, not out of fear, out of respect, which in this ecosystem is the same thing. Spider-Man has brought you 3 new clients in the last year, not directly, never directly, always through intermediaries, and each of them is a layer deeper than the last. A reformed supervillain seeking legal identity reconstruction, an enhanced individual fighting illegal government detention, a tech company secretly developing enhancement technology under a defense contract umbrella that you need to untangle from 17 regulatory bodies simultaneously. You win every single one. The cost is this. You haven't had a full conversation with your father in 4 months, not because you don't want to, because you can't. Too much of what you are now is classified, sealed, compartmentalized, or simply inexpressible in language that would make sense to someone who doesn't live in this world. You sit across from him at dinner, and he asks how work is going, and you say fine, and he says you look tired, and you say I'm okay, and you know that the gap between who he thinks you are and who you actually are is now permanently, structurally unbridgeable. You pass the bread. You talk about baseball. You're excellent at this.
Level 7, the ghost. Your name doesn't appear in any public document filed in the last 3 years. You have colleagues who will confirm you exist if pressed. You have bar association membership, maintained through a registration system that technically satisfies requirements without generating searchable records. You have a reputation that functions entirely through word of mouth in circles so exclusive they don't have names. You are a ghost with a briefcase. The work at this level isn't individual cases anymore. You're advising the advisors. You're the person that someone's fixer calls when the situation is beyond a fixer. You've been flown to 4 countries in the last 18 months to provide legal architecture for situations you can never discuss in any jurisdiction. There was an incident in Osaka. There was a situation in Geneva that required you to construct a legal argument that didn't exist in any existing body of international law. You had to essentially synthesize a new precedent from first principles in 36 hours while running on 4 hours of sleep and a paranoid certainty that at least one of the people in the room was not who they said they were. You were right about that last part. You won anyway. You are extraordinarily good at what you do. That has never been more true, and it has never meant less to you. Competence at this level becomes its own kind of silence. You can't celebrate, you can't explain, you can't even tell the story, and you've started to wonder if an experience you can never narrate to another human being is really an experience at all, or just a thing that happened inside a sealed room. You sometimes sit in your office, the real one, the one nobody knows about, and you look at the original burner phone from the Red Hook meeting. The battery died years ago. You keep it anyway. You're not sure why. You tell yourself it's a reminder of where you started. You think that might be a lie. You think it might be the last object you own that connects you to the person you used to be before all of this, before the architecture, before the frameworks, before you became the invisible center of something so large you can no longer see its edges from where you're standing. You put it back in the drawer. You go back to work.
Level 8. The foundation. You built something. Not a firm, not a practice, not a career. Something closer to infrastructure. The legal and operational skeleton upon which an entire category of extra-legal activity, sanctioned, dangerous, necessary, now depends. Remove what you built, and the whole system fractures. Courts would suddenly see cases they can't process. Agencies would have to acknowledge arrangements they've spent years denying. The gray zone that makes everything function would collapse into daylight, and daylight is fatal to ecosystems like this. You are not powerful in the way that people imagine power when they're young. You have no title, no security detail, no motorcade. You sit in ordinary rooms with a yellow legal pad and a coffee that's gotten cold, and when you speak, entire architectures shift. Spider-Man doesn't call you directly. He never has, not in years. He doesn't need to. The systems you built run without him. They'd run without either of you. That's how you know you built something real. It no longer needs you to function. The best infrastructure is self-sustaining. You designed it that way. You are 61 years old. Your name appears in the memory of approximately 40 people on Earth. Most of them are not people you'd introduce to your family. Most of them would not acknowledge knowing you in any setting that could be recorded. This is the correct arrangement. You understand that. You've understood it for years. The question that visits you at 4 in the morning, not every night but often enough, is not whether you did the right things. You're past that. The question is whether you did things or whether things were done through you, and whether that distinction matters, and whether it ever did. The answer changes depending on the night. You made the gray zone livable. You made it governable. You gave structure to something that would have devolved into pure chaos without it. The people you protected stayed protected. The systems held. That is not nothing. That is not nothing at all. But you have not told anyone you love the true shape of your life in over a decade. And some mornings, in the quiet before the phones start, you sit with that. You don't try to resolve it. You've learned that some things don't resolve. They just become part of the weight, and you've been carrying it long enough that you no longer notice it's there. You pick up the legal pad. You go back to work.